Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. We have on our schedule today to talk about one of our favorite topics that does so much harm to our country, and that's the Federal Reserve and how they create the bubbles, and which we're looking at right now. But also, there's more than just the regular correction that we have to go through, the recession and depression. But it's in combination with a tool that the Federal Reserve and other politicians have been using, and that's the crisis we have found ourselves in the very dangerous situation of the coronavirus, which many people have lost their lives on. But they have used it to exaggerate it and fearmonger and scare people in order to distract them from the real cause, and that's the Federal Reserve, Congress spending, and people who are totally dependent on government, which requires corrections after a while. We've been going through them for a long time. But this one is different. This one is, I believe, the big one. And even the Federal Reserve officers at times and other central bankers are talking about this is not going to go easy. Even some said, what we need to do is start talking more about gold because there's a bunch of central bankers that are starting to. They have to be desperate to start admitting that maybe they ought to be talking about the gold standard. But it is indeed a mess right now. The predictable correction, the stock market bust, and what's going on now was something that all Austrian economists knew about. And now we have it, but it is in combination with, almost like terrorizing people about fears and putting lockdowns on so many of the states which combine it. So at a time when the correction should be, people should pay off their debts and go back to work. But the one thing on this case is the overreaction to the coronavirus is to lock down and stop people from working. And that, of course, has compounded things. And if you look at the details of what's going on there, you realize that there is a strategy for those who believe in world domination, and they believe that there should be more power over all the people. There should be a new world order. And I'm talking specifically about Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci. I think they are really doing great harm to our country, great harm to the world, great harm to the economy, and all because they're going to do good and save lives. But the statistics are starting to come out now to show that the statistics the CDC has been using have been fudged a lot, and even the statistics now are starting to show that this may be winding down. So that is the epidemic. So this would be good, but it means, though, that we have to be vigilant, because the ultimate result of all this may be the loss of our liberties just after 9/11. Temporary program to protect us from the terrorists, and yet we're still living with all those programs. That's what's coming if we don't wake up and understand exactly what they have in mind for us, because they have literally admitted it. Chris?
Yes, Dr. Paul, and it's, we saw another stunning number with unemployment. We're up to, I believe 17 million have lost their jobs in 3 weeks. And when there's downturns, usually capitalism, free markets take the blame, but there's no way they're going to get away with that this time, because everybody knows that this is not capitalism's fault. This was political decisions, along with the Fed, that shut down the economy. And, the old adage remains eternal, that government help does not help. Government doesn't solve problems, it multiplies problems. And it's going to continue to multiply them as long as people run to government for solutions. It's not only the government, it's the Federal Reserve along with them. And we're finally starting to see the answer to the question, what happens when everyone needs a bailout at the same time? And we're getting that answer. The Fed is printing trillions of dollars nonstop. Of course, they're taking care of politically connected businesses first, but it's going way beyond that to small business loans, city and state governments, junk bonds they're getting into, foreign monetary institutions. Former Fed Chairman Janet Yellen said that the Fed should start buying equities. So the Fed's bubble has sank everyone at the same time, and now they're trapped into making, everything worse because their only solution is just the counterfeit money.
Right. You know, I've told many people over the years that I got fascinated with monetary policy in the 1960s when I started studying Austrian economics, realizing that the Bretton Woods was a flawed system and that it would fail, and indeed it did in 1971. And ever since then, I've done my best to speak out and warn people and say this is a bad way to go. But it's pretty nice to have the artificial moneymaker, the counterfeiter of the world. They get pretty much what they want, and everybody seems to be happy with it. You have more welfare, and the military-industrial complex loves it, and nobody has to pay for it. The college professors say, well, deficits don't matter, and we don't have to worry about these things, so spend, and the debt is not a big deal. But even though I have watched it closely, have not been really surprised by, you know, the NASDAQ bubble bursting or the housing bubble bursting or the inflation of the 70s. Now, I have to admit, really not a surprise, and there's a lot of people who understood Austrian economics were not surprised. But I have to admit, I am pretty surprised, even though I said it in the past, I'm still shocked how quick things moved. Because I, for years, have described what we were doing. We were trying to build a giant, wonderful skyscraper with no foundation. And the foundation has been eroded. I said, we're just sitting there, and it's going to come down. So even though I was saying those things, I guess I didn't want to believe it. But that is what's happened. It's like the whole thing has collapsed. And there's only one thing left. That seems to help it to stick together. At least there gives the insiders a little bit of hope because they have control of the purse strings, the spending, and the inflation. That is the printing of money. And that means that the bubble, the dollar bubble, which has been used to now, and as Chris, you pointed out, they're starting to buy stocks and bonds, and they did have the mortgage-backed securities, and everybody gets bailed out, and deficits are exploding. So this last bubble, you know, if it goes as quickly as this collapse, I mean, what was it, about a month ago or so? It wasn't very long ago that this economy was the greatest economy in the world. There was high unemployment, high employment, and everybody seemed to be happy, no inflation, and the military-industrial complex was happy, the welfares were happy. The only thing they could find to hate was Trump. But now they have to work on it. Who are they going to hate now? Because Trump isn't getting hurt so much from not having predicted what's coming. But it came fast, and that's what impressed me so. But it's logical. It was a warning that people should have had if you understand what these bubbles are all like. And now what we have to start thinking about is this dollar bubble. What is this dollar bubble? Well, it's all over the place. The dollar's, you know, has infected the entire world, and people depend on it. We've already, certainly in 8 and 9, we sent a lot of money overseas to the other central banks. Of course, against the law, against the Constitution. It wasn't through our budgets or anything else. But it's a powerful tool. And now that we see the cooperation of Treasury with the Federal Reserve, what they're doing is trying to sidestep a little bit of restriction on following, you know, some of the laws. They'll just get together and buy up whatever they need. Now, they say this is something new and different, but this Fed and Treasury have been working together for a long, long time. They accommodate, and they're going to change the rules just to make it, because they're going to do a lot more, and they're going to say, oh, it's legal now. We've changed these rules, and Congress has allowed us to do this. But the principle is the same. They think that they can monetize, buy up debt, and keep everybody happy. And it isn't working, and there's a major crisis. And the big thing going on now is who's getting blamed. Is it the Federal Reserve? Not really. A few people, I know the people that watch this program know that the Federal Reserve has a lot of to do with this and it's caused a lot of evil. But I'll tell you what, not too many people out on the street are talking about the Federal Reserve causing this mess, although more so than it used to be. I mean, people are waking up. But the big difference is now, if you walk out, you might not see anybody. Everybody's locked down in their houses. And we mentioned yesterday on the program that state of Texas says you can't even go to the park. And other places, they say, well, if you go to the beach, you can You can go out and exercise, but you can't sunbathe. I mean, the whole thing is insane. And if you say anything about this, which I've been saying for a good many months, that I'm calloused against the people who are sick. But they don't have any proof that all this activity has done much good. We compared yesterday the difference between Colorado and South Carolina. South Carolina had minimal regulations, and they did much better with a larger population. And Colorado did much worse, and they had to lock down. So there's no proof that they're stopping this disease. They don't understand how viral diseases, go through cycles. And then we get into this thing that one doctor in the whole country, Fauci, wants to decide everything. But I hope he gets blamed for all the disadvantages that will be discovered from this. But the main reason for all this is for people to look and build up this fear and intimidate people to accept this whole notion that they have to do exactly what they say. And now those individuals are claiming credit because it looks like things are getting a little bit better. But that's not abnormal. That's the way it worked. But now they want to say, see, the people were great. They did exactly what we told them, and that's the reason. And now they're laying plans to really lock us down forever is what they're talking about. Well, there's going to be another one next year. They're admitting their statistics were wrong to stir up all this trouble. But now they're admitting that it's the case. But there'll be another time. So we don't even want to leave this crisis without getting everybody vaccinated. And you have to guarantee you've been vaccinated or you have immunity. And we might have to put a stamp of approval that you can go outdoors again. I'll tell you what. I've been worried about the personal liberty issue for a long, long time and connected it with economic issues. But we ought to be more concerned than ever. I was pretty upset after 9/11 because they trapped you there. If you said anything about why these things happen, I say, oh, you're un-American, that sort of thing. But the people said, you've got to give up your freedom to be safe. And so that's why we have NSA. That's why you have to go through the checkpoint. That's why you have to be under an investigation and surveillance. And that's why we had Ed Snowden figure it out that they don't even follow the rules there. They spy on everybody. Well, I tell you, I think it's a lot worse now. That bubble was bigger. The correction isn't occurring. And now they have this incentive to feed it to the people who love to boss other people around. And I think if you look at Bill Gates and look at Dr. Fauci, these are the kind of people who are doing it. They are not people interested in libertarianism and freedom. They're interested in building their own hierarchy. And that to me is a problem. So one thing, Chris, that we've tried desperately to do is give people information and then have people use this information to know what the real culprit is. It's the attack on liberty. Whether it's the medical problems or whether it's the financial problems, less is better, let me tell you. The correction for all the mischief of the Fed is just get out of the way and let the people have their freedom, let them go back to work. And medicine, pretty much the same thing. This whole thing that we can use a bureaucracy to settle all these problems in medical care. It's not working, and there's so much coming out now to show it hasn't worked. Chris?
Yes, Dr. Paul, and all this authoritarianism that you're talking about, it thrives in an environment with of fiat money. And that's why we go to the root and talk about the Fed, because that's where it all begins. They create this funny money. This unbacked printing of however much money you want has a 100% failure rate. If you look through history, this is not the first time it's happened. It's not the first time it's happened in America. In fact, they tried printing Continentals and they became absolutely worthless, which is why America's founders made sure to put into the Constitution that gold and silver are money, something that has never been amended, that's still on the books, that's still the supreme law of the land. It's just totally ignored. But the difference now, like Dr. Paul said, is this is just on a global scale. It's the same principle, but it's just bigger, which means it just takes more time to fail. But it's going to fail, and it is failing. And, when you look back through history, you look back at what they did, and you think, why didn't they just stop printing the money? But we can see why now. In their minds, they can't stop. When you have a printing press, everybody wants you to print. Whether it's the military-industrial complex with their wars, whether it's the socialists who want to pass out everything for free by printing money. they can't stop. They're pulled from every direction. Everybody wants a bailout. That's why when you look through history and you see how they destroyed their money, they couldn't stop. But because they believe that what they're doing is good. They believe that counterfeiting money will save them, and they're 100% wrong.
You know, if you checked on most Americans, most of them would recognize and understand what the rule of supply and demand means, and how free pricing is important at that, because price will tell you whether there's a shortage or too much, and tells the businessman what to do and tells the consumer what to do. Supply and demand and prices, it's key to it. But unfortunately, over the many years now, many decades, we suspend that law, especially in times of wars and emergency, or if there's a hurricane. We suspend that because if you charge more than it used to be for sort of supplies, if you're involved in a hurricane, you're gouging people. But that's what you want. You want to know supplies are down, prices go up, people take a greater risk, they'll work harder to get you what you need, and then prices come down because people want to make a buck and they come in and help people. But no, it's when you need the, like during World War II, we had price controls totally and completely. Under the conditions of war, or the conditions that we're experiencing today, you want the most free market possible. But with all these rules and regulations, it's getting much worse. But the biggest price that you have to watch that contributes to the building of these bubbles and prohibits the correction, and that is the price of money. And there is no calculated market price of money anymore, and it hasn't been in many ways because the government has controlled it. It's been decades now that people said, all the way back, Greenspan and others, they kept the interest rates too low, too long, and they gave us this bubble. Of course, that was a big deal of it, but it was part of it, and they went on and on. It's amazing, it's an irony, that one of the things that allowed it to go on is that we did have a good segment of our history, even when you stretch it out, in a relative way, we were a free country, freer than usual. We had a sounder currency than we had, and the middle class was very large. And it takes a long time to wipe them out. And that's what has happened now. There is no middle class anymore, but that was a predictable event. You destroy the money and free market pricing, you will destroy the middle class. But the lack of a price on money means that nobody, right now they're trying to figure out what the price of gold is in terms of dollars. The price of gold is the ultimate money, and what it purchases is what really counts. But they're trying to figure out the relationship of dollars to gold, and they don't know what it is. They used to have spot prices and future prices and figure it out, and they used to give you some information. Now, that type of pricing doesn't exist, which means, that gold is a risky investment. I'd rather think that what you better look at, if you think it's gold is a risky investment, I would say dollar-denominated assets are the risky investment. And yet we've been doing it for years and years. Actually, Roosevelt started it. There was one Federal Reserve official just recently said gold prices should be higher so we could inflate more. That's exactly what Roosevelt did. In the midst of the Depression, it was caused by the Fed and perpetuated by government intervention. And so the first thing he did within a month, he closed the banks, called in the gold. The American people had to give up the gold and raise the price of gold to the advantage of the government, not the people. So the gold went from $20 an ounce up to $35 an ounce for the purpose of printing a lot of money and bailing out everybody. Now here we are back again, a Federal Reserve officials saying the price of gold ought to go up and this will help liquidate debt. And in a way he's right, but that's out of his control. The price of gold is going up because there's too many dollars, and the debt will be liquidated because it will never be paid. The big question is which route are we going to take? Some people think we should work harder and get better people in Congress, but that's futility because the political power is so strong. The only way debt gets liquidated under these circumstances is by destroying the value of the dollar. And so the person that's calling for higher gold prices, it's not because they believe in the gold standard. Roosevelt didn't believe in the gold standard. What he did, he believed in liquidating debt and opening up the doors so that he could print as much money to have the New Deal. And so in a free society, though the price tells us a whole lot, in spite of all this, the dollar-gold ratio is important. And we see the chaos that we've had here in the last couple of months. I mean, gold has gone up a whole lot. which means the dollar has gone down a whole lot, and there's a big difference on that. So that cost to price or ratio is very important to tell people what they're doing. But ultimately, all prices, no matter how many regulations they are, you regulate the price of food and everything else, there will always be a market price. It's called the black market. There's always going to be some market there that'll sort it out, and the politicians know about it, and they usually have access to it. But it's much better to live in a free society to prevent these problems. It's much better to live in a society that, even though we got into it, that believes in returning to the market and individual choices and personal liberty, because the problems will be bad, but they'll go away quickly. But to compound them with a medical problem, a serious medical problem, and blow it way out of proportion is not the way to solve our problems.
Right, Dr. Paul. I'll finish up by saying, you know, as I mentioned, fiat money has a 100% failure rate, but there's another side to the coin. Truth, sound money, they have a 100% success rate. Truth has never lost, sound money has never lost, and they will ultimately gain the upper hand again. But until then, it's very important to realize that government and the Fed can always make things worse. It's the nature of power not to stop what they're doing. They're convinced that what they're doing is right. And they're going to continue to do it until the citizens want to reverse course. And the citizens can make themselves heard by speaking. Your most valuable asset is not only your mind, it's also your mouth. You can share the ideas that you learn. And, you know, Dr. Paul, Daniel, and I are so happy that with the new thousands of people that are joining us all the time, because people are sharing our videos, people are speaking, and we can't thank you enough. And, you know, we'll speak the ideas of liberty for you, and we ask just in return that you speak the ideas of liberty to others for us.
Thank you, Chris, and you made some very important points there, and I want to follow up on your emphasis on truth breaking out. And I do believe that there are signs of that happening now. People are questioning Fauci, and why is he the dictator, and is his information always loyal? He actually admits that he misled people a couple months ago, but then he turns it around and says, it was because you did what we suggested and followed all our rules, and that is the reason things aren't so bad right now. But when I think truth is breaking out, people are starting to challenge the status quo and all the talk that has been going up. And, you know, in Brazoria County, which is where we live, is a significant county, and we've had 2 cases. And I'm not supposed to be able to go to the park. They can't play golf. It's really just total nonsense, and it doesn't help them. They need to get out and get in the sunshine. We need more emphasis on how people have protection against illnesses like this. You know, the vitamin treatment and just the things that are a lot easier. Getting in sun is not harmful, and locking people up is harmful. Not only medically, but psychologically it's harmful, because you're starting to read about some of the stresses that are occurring because we're locking people up. Yeah, maybe it's fun for a day or two, but a month or two, and what Fauci and Gates are saying, it's not going to change. We have to be really tough from now on. But I think people are waking up, and there's reports in various newspapers that are saying now that we were misled. And one of these days they're going to wake up and say, hey, we don't need you, Dr. Fauci. We need a different kind of a doctor. We have to have somebody that has a little bit of common sense. And somebody else can figure out the psychological motivations of Bill Gates, because it's not money, obviously, but there's something in his mind that I think he has a desire to be, you know, the director of world events somehow or another. But anyway, his views and the views of Fauci and what's going on there is not healthy for liberty. And that's what I want to do. I want to promote the cause of liberty. And I thank all of you who have been with us on that issue. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.